Okay, so what if I told you about a country that existed for only 5 days? And this wasn't an accident, it wasn't some kind of failed state, it was completely by design. Today, we're digging into the absolutely fascinating and, let's be honest, pretty strange story of British Somaliland.
5. That's it.
Just 5 days. Not 5 years, not 5 decades. And here's the part that's going to blow your mind. This wasn't a collapse. This wasn't a mistake. That was the entire planned lifespan of this nation. How does that even work? Well, to get to the bottom of this, we've got to go way back. We're talking about the 19th century, right in the middle of the Age of Empires. So, our story really kicks off not with a grand conquest, but with a bit of shrewd strategy. For the British Empire at the time, the Horn of Africa wasn't about planting a flag for the sake of it. Nah, it was all about protecting a super important economic lifeline. And this is a really crucial point. British Somaliland was never a colony like, say, India or Kenya. It was a protectorate. That basically means Britain's power there wasn't based on force, but on a whole series of agreements and treaties they made with the local Somali clan leaders. It's a different kind of relationship. So this whole arrangement gets set up in the 1880s. The British show up around 1884. But the protectorate doesn't become official until 1887, and again, it's all done through these treaties. This detail that it was built on agreements is going to be super important later on. So you might be asking, why were the British even there in the first place? Well, it was all business, really. They needed to keep that trade route through the Gulf of Aden secure, and they needed a steady supply of meat for their big military base right across the water in Aden. You can think of British Somaliland less as a prize jewel of the empire and more like a strategic convenience store with a really light management team. But that light management team was about to face a major challenge. Turns out, even a limited foreign presence can spark a fire, and this one led to one of the longest and toughest anti-colonial struggles in African history. And that fire was started by a man named Abdullah Hassan. He was the leader of what was known as the Dervish movement, a really powerful blend of religious and nationalist resistance that had one clear goal: kick out all the foreign powers. And believe me, this was not just some minor uprising. This rebellion went on for 20 years. For 2 whole decades, from 1900 all the way to 1920, the dervishes fought the British Empire to a virtual standstill. It was a long, brutal conflict that really shaped the identity of the protectorate. So after the Dervish War finally ended, things quieted down for a while. But then, a massive global conflict, World War II, showed up right on Somaliland's doorstep. And, you guessed it, it changed everything. During the war, Italian forces actually managed to invade and occupy the territory. Now, Britain took it back less than a year later, but the damage was done. That whole myth of the invincible, untouchable British Empire, it was shattered. And in the years after the war, a whole new wave of Somali nationalism just exploded. The calls for independence got a lot louder. You know, you can really see this whole journey through just 3 key people. It starts with Frederick Hunter. He's the first governor who set the whole thing up. It ends with Douglas Hall, the very last governor who had the job of handing over the keys. And then there's the future, Muhammad I, Igal, who became the first and, as it turns out, the only prime minister of this new independent state of Somaliland. And that finally brings us full circle. All these different threads we've been following, the protectorate built on treaties, the fierce sense of resistance, that post-war boom of nationalism, it was all leading to this one very strange, very short moment in history. So the stage is totally set. The momentum for independence is unstoppable. But it still doesn't answer our main question. Why on earth would all of this result in a country that only lasts for 5 days? The answer isn't just how fast things moved in 1960. It was like a whirlwind. In April, the local leaders officially asked for independence. Britain, facing a new reality in the world, said yes. On June 26, boom, the state of Somaliland becomes a real sovereign country. And then, just 5 days later, on July 1st, it voluntarily chose to end its own existence by merging with its neighbor to the south, the former Italian Somaliland. So you see, that incredibly short lifespan wasn't a bug, it was a feature. It was the entire point of the exercise. Those 5 days of being an independent country were just a necessary legal step to get to a much, much bigger goal. And that goal was this incredibly powerful idea called pan-Somalism. For the political leaders back then, the dream wasn't just about being free from Britain. The real dream was to unite all the Somali-speaking people who had been carved up by colonial borders into one big unified nation. But to do that, they had to become a sovereign country first, so they could legally, as equals, join with their brothers and sisters in the south to create the new Somali Republic. So think about that. A nation is born, it's recognized by the world, and then it willingly gives up its own sovereignty in less time than it takes to get over a cold. All for an idea. The idea of unity. It's just a wild story that really makes you think, doesn't it? About how sometimes a country isn't the end goal. Sometimes it's just a bridge to something else.